Well, let's start. The objective of this conference, as you can see here, is to understand what baptism really is and its esoteric significance. As I was saying, it is necessary to understand what baptism is in itself to really understand its esoteric significance. The sacrament of baptism exists in almost all the religions. It's not only found in the Catholic religion, but also in many others. Whenever someone enters one of these religions, they are baptized. Religions used to have two circles, the exoteric or public and the esoteric or secret. Exoteric with an X and esoteric with an S. The esoteric circle does not study the sacred books in a merely exoteric or external way, but rather in an esoteric way, leaving aside the letter that kills to capture the spirit that gives life. What is written between the lines, what the masses are unable to understand. Most religions are devoid of the initiatory tradition. They no longer have that tradition, nor do they even remotely understand it. However, despite everything, they preserve the exoteric ritual of baptism. The ritual of baptism that takes place in the physical world is representing the esoteric baptism which we most carry out in the inner world. Baptism, as you can see here, is a pact of sexual magic, a sexual commitment. The ritual of baptism is a ceremony through which the baptized person makes a pact with their inner God to later practice sexual alchemy. If the child, later as an adult, keeps the pact, it will have served him well. If he doesn't keep the pact, he will fail. It doesn't matter that she received the sacrament in the physical world. What's the point of receiving it if you don't keep the oath or the covenant? This means that the human salvation lies in sex and the spinal cord, and anything other than that is a waste of time. In the ritual of baptism, water is poured over the head of the person being baptized. This represents that the waters must rise to the brain, during sexual transmutation. This is the key to baptism. Only by working the pure waters of life can one return to the Edenic paradisiacal state. The baptismal font, for example, in the Christian churches, represents the philosopher's stone and the creative organs. It contains the lustral water, the mercury of the alchemists, which represents the sacred sperm. The candlelight, for example, represents the alchemist's sulfur, the fire that is released after the death of each defect. If the baptized person knows how to intelligently combine mercury with sulfur, they achieve the second birth and enter the kingdom of heaven. But if the baptized person never works with mercury and sulfur, that baptism has been of no use to him. The consummation of baptism is achieved in the sacrament of matrimony with the practice of sexual magic. Well, so the steps to achieve baptism are as follows. First, we must acquire knowledge of how to work with the three factors for the revolution of consciousness. And the first of these three factors is spiritual birth. This factor reveals to us the mysteries of sexual magic. Previously, people who had certain levels of consciousness taught this knowledge to their children from a young age and baptized them so that this covenant may be fulfilled. Guided by their beings, they consciously choose their children's partners to fulfill this pact. That's why we see that today in many countries, parents choose their children's partners, although this has lots significance and is not done consciously, but out of habit. We who didn't receive this knowledge when we were young or children, and no one taught us this knowledge, will begin the moment we receive the three factors for the revolution of consciousness. Then we begin practicing the three factors and make a chastity pact with our partner. This means that we commit to using our energy wisely and that we will not engage in sexual intercourse to spend that energy through ejaculation or orgasm. Rather, we are going to transmute it into the sexual act, which should be carried out between a couple of the opposite sex in fidelity, chastity, and love. We also commit ourselves to eliminate the fornicating self and all those defects that cause us to squander that precious sexual energy. We also we're going to be applying the four rectitudes through the death in progress, from moment to balance the centers and ignite the sacred fire. When this happens, the regeneration of the physical body and the vital body begins, and the vertebrae of the spine begin to fill. Baptism is fulfilled when the first serpent corresponding to the solar physical body is lifted up. This is when the energy reaches the brain for the first time. The first two serpents climb together up to a certain point. Then the vital body stops and only the physical body continues climbing up until it is completely raised. Baptism occurs precisely after the physical body has been regenerated, while the vital body is being completed. To achieve this, it is necessary to eliminate the fornicating self, because while we are expelling our energy, we will not be able to lift these serpents. When baptism is completed with the regeneration of the vital body, one receives something known as the Tao Qi. This is what we see here. This symbolizes the level of chastity that has been achieved and that the person will no longer commit fornication. Furthermore, the incubus or succubus defect is completely eliminated. Here, another pact will be generated. Here, we agree that we will continue working and moving forward to embody our inner Christ, the one who will save our inner world and eliminate the cause defects, the head of legends. Something very important to know is that the sacraments we hear about in the Catholic Church, for example, are related to this inner work and this process. Yes. Well, we will look at the sacrament of baptism, which we just discussed, and which is related to the regeneration of the physical body and the lifting up of the first serpent. Then the sacrament of confirmation, when the regeneration of the vital body is completed or the serpent is raised for the second time. Then we have the sacrament of confession, through which we confess our defects and commit to eliminating our ego, and this is related to the creation of the astral body. The fourth is the Eucharist, and is related to the bread that signifies wisdom. So is related to giving wisdom, which is the sacrifice for humanity, and is also related to the creation of the mental body. Then the fifth is the priestly order, and this is related to the power of the verb and the will, and is related to the creation of the causal body. Then we find the matrimony as the sixth sacrament, which refers to the union of the causal body and the buddhic body in what is known as the perfect matrimony. Let us remember that from this union the inner Christ is conceived. And finally, we have extreme unction, which is related to the process of the second death that must occur before resurrection, and is related to the atmic body. When the Christ is born and passes to the second mountain, and the second body is created, which is the vital body of gold, the baptism of fire will take place. Let's remember that in the second mountain, the Christ will have to create 7 bodies of gold. Okay, so this is going to be happening in the creation, or when that Christ finishes the creation of the second body of gold in this second mountain, which is the vital body of gold. Here, a new pact will be generated. Here, the elimination of the causal selves or defects, or the heads of legions of defects we have within us, is agreed upon. Something interesting happens here, is that when this vital body of gold is created, the personality is completely eliminated. This is the symbolism left to us by the beheading of John the Baptist. This symbolizes the old man who must die so that the new man may emerge. Another interesting fact is that John the Baptist, who baptized with water, said that someone would come after him who would baptize with fire, and that someone is the Christ, the new man, which is why this baptism is known as the baptism of fire. Well, when the Christ completes the second mountain, creates the golden bodies, and eliminates the causal defects or selves or eyes, then the resurrection occurs, and he passes to the third mountain. There he will have to create the bodies of light in order to receive the baptism of light, which occurs when the being or the Father descends from the Absolute and penetrates him completely. The baptism of light occurs with the same intimate self-realization of the being. As we can see, there are 3 baptisms. The baptism of water. This is the baptism of the first mountain. It is related to the completion of the solar vital body. The baptism of fire. This is the baptism of the second mountain. It relates to the completion of the golden vital body and is represented by the beheading of John the Baptist, as I said before. And the baptism of light. This is the true baptism. It is related to the second birth and the creation of the bodies of light on the third mountain. I repeat that these baptisms occur in the internal worlds and during our progress in our inner work. The external baptism performed in various religions is truly of no use to us. In fact, we could even say it's harmful because through these external baptism rituals, we would be linking ourselves to those schools or religions. And well, that's all for today's topic. Thank you all very much for joining us. I invite you to the next conference where we'll study the work of the first mountain, the first of the 3 great works for achieving the inner self-realization of our being. We'll see when we actually start climbing this mountain and the entire process we must go through to complete it and move on to the second mountain. So thank you very much for being here, and bye bye.